August BI user group. We're very excited to have this event, as always. The monthly cadence has been very exciting, keeping us on our toes. So what we've got for you today is firstly the BI news from Zungu from Sador, and then afterwards I'm going to be going through what we've got on Fabric news, and then right after that we have two community flashes. The first one from Sven on Power Query tips and tricks, and then the last one from Keamo and Matlala about EishTML visuals. So just to say that again, that's pretty much where we are. That's today's agenda. But then we do have some etiquette that we just want to remind you guys of. So we love to see your faces. So please enable your video if you're comfortable, and if you're able, it would be nice to see you. Please mute your audio unless you have a question. Then feel free to unmute and ask the question, or to raise your hand, and then whoever is speaking should then stop and allow you to ask the question. And I think Sven, you'll be monitoring the chat as well. So yeah, also just pop the question in the chat if you can't hit the mute button. And then a very important announcement is that next month, so we alternate between online and hybrid events, but next month we will be breaking that pattern, mostly because of the school holidays, and because Sven we're all very jealous, but he's going to attend the Europe Fabric event, so he won't be able to be here in person. And because of school holidays, a few people won't be able to make it in person, so we decided just to make it easier by making it online only. So yeah, that means the September event is going to be online, as you can see here. So then our last in-person event is going to be the last one for the year, ended with a bang, in person in November. Yeah, so just be aware, next month, September, is going to be online only. We'll send out lots of comms, can remind everyone, but there will be no in-person events in September. All right, that's pretty much it from the announcements and setting the stage. I'm going to hand over to Sia, and then we can see what's been happening in the BI news. Sia, over to you.
Thank you, Stefan. All right. I'll just share my screen now with you guys. Let me know how the audio comes, because I think the last time when I did a recording, I did get a feedback that it was soft on the audio side. So just let me know if the audio is soft, okay?
Okay, will do.
All right, I'll start the video now.
I can't hear it yet.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Nothing is actually coming through on my side either.
I also can't hear it yet.
Oh, technology.
When you record a demo to avoid demo bugs, and then the recording fails.
Okay, funny, because I played it just before the session and it played fine, but now audio's gone. Okay, no worries. I still do have the presentation, so not all is lost. Give me just 2 seconds. Let me switch away from this.
Awesome.
Stop the share. All right. And let's bring up the presentation. Okay. Presentation mode, and now I just need to see my teams there. Okay, let me know when you do see my presentation.
Here we go.
All right, awesome, thank you. Okay, welcome everyone to this month's installment of the Power BI user group. I'll be taking you through the news and updates for today. But before we get started, let's just go through a look at the agenda. So looking at the agenda items for today, we've got an intro followed by the news. Under news, we've got a few topics of discussion, starting with a new paginated report authoring experience, which was a preview update that was done in July. And then following that, we'll look at a deep dive into DAX Query View for Web, which is also another update that came through the July updates. And then we'll look at the last news topic, which is the announcement of the general availability of the tabular model definition language. which they have been working on in preview, but now it has gone to general availability. And then looking at the update section. So the update section for today, I decided to do 2 demos. One being the look at the new authoring experience of the paginated report, and then the second being the visual level format strings. And then finally, I'll just share some useful links of where my information comes from. Okay, so that's just some introduction information and some contact details for those of you who would like to get in touch. All right, so looking at the first news article for today, which is the new paginated report authoring experience. They have been working on the paginated report authoring view in Power BI service. Initially, when this started, I must say I wasn't the biggest fan of it. I tried it a few times, but I just thought it was a half-baked product, which was released too soon. But with some of the improvements that they've now made in this new installment, I think they're getting there. There's still some few things that I picked up, but I think it's a big step up from where it started. You'll notice, for those of you who've worked with the paginated view, that the biggest change is on the canvas, where initially you would have just the editor view, but now you have the editor view and the preview, which will guide you as you are doing your edit to your paginated report, in showing you what it would look like for the users on the preview, and it samples your data to actually render what that view would look like, so that you'd get a sense of what your users would be looking at when they look at that paginated report. Okay. The second article for the day is a deep dive into DAX query view. This is also one of, I would say, a very good update that they've rolled out. So again, Microsoft is always rolling out changes to align the service with some of the functionality that we have with Power BI Desktop. And in this update, they've brought in the DAX query view for web, which will now enable you to run measures in the DAX query view for web and basically save those in your model on the Power BI service. This is something that you do need to enable within your workspace settings. So you do need to tick on that preview feature that users can edit the data models in this Power BI service, in the Power BI service. Once that is ticked, once that is ticked, you will notice that when you then click on the 3 dots, the ellipse next to the semantic model, you will have a new option that says Write DAX Queries. From that DAX Queries option, you will now then get the DAX query view as we've seen it in the Power BI Desktop, which you will now get in the service, which will allow you to evaluate and define measures within there. And you can also use Copilot to help you with your measures in there as well. So I do think this is quite a good improvement that they've rolled out. For some time now, we have been looking for ways to create measures directly on the service, and they have done it now through the DAX query view. So yeah, I do think this is a step in the right direction, but again, we'll only know once people have tried it and tested it and see, you know, how does it work compared to the desktop version, and if this will solve the issue. And then finally, it's just on the news items, it's just to talk about the general availability of TML. Again, previously, this was made available in preview where you had to download your PBIP files and then save them as PBIR, which is the format that uses the TML version and not TML. PBIP is TML and PBIR, I think, is the one that uses TML. But now, basically, Microsoft has made it generally available, which means any new files that you are creating for your Power BI projects going forward will be using the TML version. But you can still download your old files and convert them, the TML files, and convert them to the TML model files. All right, with that, I would like to then switch over to some demos for you guys. Okay, so to do that, I need to just first bring a different presentation to the screen. So just bear with me, please. It's the best way to do this. Okay, let's close.
While you're bringing that, I'm actually, does this mean we can finally check our Power BI reports into Git? As in general availability, it's not a preview feature anymore. Like it works now.
They still say, funny enough, they still say for Git and what you call it? I forgot what that. Git integration. Those still remain in preview. However, the general availability means it's now more stable. And basically, with new files that get created, it will now automatically do it in TIMDL as opposed to TIMZL. So that's now the new way going forward. So which means your old legacy files, Microsoft has been talking about that they will be updated as time goes on, but you can still download them and save them as the new format if you want to do it like now.
Okay.
Instead of waiting for the rollout. All right, so let me bring in my Power BI desktop file. All right, cool. Do you guys see the desktop file?
Yeah. Looks
right.
very good.
Thank you. I took pride in this work. All right, so one of the things I want to first demo to you guys is showing you the visual format strings. So to do that, I'm going to first create a visual calculation. So for those of you that don't know, visual calculations are those calculations that you create for a particular visual. They don't exist anywhere else in your model except for that particular visual from which you created them from. So let's just create a simple one. I'm not going to do anything complicated. I'm just going to do an amount, my amount field times, let's say, by 1.3, just so that it's something that can be easily spotted. So now you'll see there's that orange line there, which is now the new measure that I created, my visual calculation. And one of the things is if you wanted to format this, let's say I wanted to format the number, I mean, you can still use the format function within DAX where you just use format and then give it the type of format that you want. So let's just make it like a whole number format with no decimals, and then close that. But the moment I hit enter, you'll notice that in my view field, the table field here that shows me my values, I can see the answers, but in the visual itself, that has disappeared. And the reason for that is because I applied this particular format within the DEX measure itself, it now converted that measure from a number format to a string format. So my measure is now being read as a string measure, which it cannot plot in the visual. So let me undo that change. So to actually get around that, Microsoft now rolled an update where you can come into your format pane section, and then under general, there is this data format option where you can specify the format in there. So I can still do the same format. And now you'll notice that the format has been applied and I haven't lost my graph. So I still see it both in the graph and it's formatted the way I want to format it. But obviously I've just done it in a simplistic way. But this is just to show you now that, the customization is being rolled out to allow you to do more fine-grained formatting to your visual level calculations that you are working on. They do say this can apply to a lot more, but this is one of the scenarios that I've seen that has been highlighted by Microsoft as one of the key drivers of this feature. Okay, so that's just the one preview for the visual format string. And then the one other feature that I want to show you is the paginated report. Sorry. All right. So now I'm on the Power BI service. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. So now I want to create a paginated report. So to do that, I'll just click on the ellipse, go to create paginated report. So that's still pretty much the same. But like I said, the changes come in the canvas itself, where you've now got an edit and a preview pane, which were not previously there. Initially, it was just the edit where you would have to edit, and then you could only preview once you play or execute the report to see what it would look like, which could take some time if you have a lot of data that needs to load every time that thing needs to preview. But in this case, it's nice to have it basically side by side or one beneath the other so that you can see how your changes are going to look like for users. So let's just do a quick example. I'm not going to do anything too fancy. Let's just do one item there. Let's do budget amount. Let's do sales amount, and I'm going to leave it at that. So now you'll see as you are plotting in your editor view. Your preview is showing you how the report is going to look like. And I do think this is a nice touch because it does sample your data to show you what it's going to look like for users, as opposed to having to run through all of the data if you've got a lot of it, which could take some time. So this at least gives you a sense of what your users would be interacting with as you are editing it. And one of the things that I did find was also a nice touch is how now they've made it easy to add parameters. Initially, you had to go through a long way to create a parameter, then bring the parameter into the report. But now, if I wanted to use, let's say, my year-month field as a parameter, and again, a parameter in a paginated report, you can think of it as a slicer that we use in a normal Power BI report. So in this case, I would add to filters, which brings it into my filters list, then click on the three dots there, the ellipses, and then create parameter. And now it brings the parameter within my report view. So you'll see that in my preview, there's my parameter, there are my year, month, dates, and you basically have added the parameter. One of the things I will say that I still think needs quite a bit of an improvement from this is the parameters. Unlike how in Power BI, I can define the type of slicer depending on obviously the type of field you're using. You know, you can have a between, an after, a before. It does make the slicer experience a little bit better with Power BI, but in this case, you only have it as a list. So if your parameter has a long list of items, then this might still not be useful for your users to scroll down and find the item and tick it, and then having to find their way back. So I still think this needs a bit of improvement, but it is a step in the right direction that it's now easy to add parameters, which previously was not the case. And another thing that I found with the parameters is that when you use date as parameters, or at least this is what I've found in my case, it actually uses the date time format. Even though my date is a date and it's not a daytime format, it basically defaults to 12 a.m. for all of the times. But I mean, it is something that I think they need to improve on, because it's not also aesthetically nice to look at where everything is at daytime, especially if you're not using daytimes. But yeah, apart from those gripes, I think they are doing a good job in terms of having this as close to ready as possible. So yeah, those are the two demos that I had for you today, which I thought were good improvements from Microsoft side. And
Very
then, cool. Thank you. And then just bringing it back to the presentation. Yeah, so the last thing that I had for you were the useful links of where I got the article topics from. If you guys are interested in having a look, I do advise you go and look into there. They do go into a lot of detail than what I've touched on in some of the features that I've showed. So I do advise have a look at that and see some of the improvements that they've made there. And with that, that brings me to the end of my presentation. So thank you.
Awesome, thanks, yeah. No, that's great. I can't believe that every month they keep on putting like actual real quality of life features. I feel like they should have run out of those by now, but still they come up with these new ideas.
Yeah, that's true. I actually gave up on a few of them, but they kept improving them to the point where I couldn't ignore them myself. I was like, okay, let's give it a check again. And it does seem that they actually in the right direction in some of these things. So yeah, the team is working quite hard there.
Yeah. I think a big thing for us as well right now is it's quite important for us that our end users are able to build their own reports. And the fact that you have almost all of the functionality online in the service to build reports that you had in Power BI Desktop is actually pretty amazing. Power BI Desktop is a pretty heavy tool, but the fact that you can do it all in the service online makes it so much easier for our end users to build their own reports. And I think it just helps. The fact that you can make your own DAX measures now, as you showed earlier, I think it just makes the self-service reporting so much more realistic.
Stefan, on that, actually, a few months ago when Microsoft were here, in that event that Michael and I set up there at Microsoft premises, the guys from Microsoft actually mentioned that they are working really hard to make the desktop version and the service version of Power BI on parity. So anything you can do in desktop, they intend for you to be able to do in the service as well. So that's interesting.
Sure. But it makes sense. It's one barrier removed from starting to make your own reports. You just open a link and you start editing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Cool. Well, next up is the Fabric news, so I can take it further. Yeah, let me share screen real quick. I only have one screen today, unfortunately. So please, Sven, shout at me if someone raises their hand, or maybe just unmute and shout at me. All right, but let me, oh, I wanted to share this link, right? So literally, I was making this, and then yesterday evening, like last night, they published an amazing blog. So the Fabric blog got an update, and that's where most of the content that I'm going to show you guys comes from. Although I did turn it into slides and pictures and added a few jokes here and there. But if you just want the content, I'm just putting the link in the chat. Sorry for showing you your own face, Sven. Let me just pop that in the chat there. I highly recommend giving it a read. Control-Shift-V. There we go. Okay, there it is. And I actually see there's a comment here from Abram. Let's ask you can share if you're on my space where I can freelance this data. Yeah, we could definitely chat about this, Abram. Just hang around at the end. But then, yeah, this is the blog that I'm going to be referring to. It's a great read. It's not that long. So yeah, if you want more content, that's where you can find it. But you don't have to read it because I made an awesome presentation for you guys to look at. So Sven, can you see Microsoft Fabric updates? There we go.
Got it.
Awesome. All right. So as you know, Fabric is split into a bunch of different experiences. So I thought it makes sense to split the updates also by the same experiences. And that's also how it is in the blog. So we're going to look at core updates. That's kind of the interface, how it feels, user experience to do things. There are lots of UI improvements over time. And then Synapse, data engineering, data science, data factory, OneLake, and some real-time intelligence. All right, first up, the updates to the core. Not that core, but what they added in now is better folders. So they recently introduced folders into the Fabric workspaces, and they now actually enabled us to select and search folders, search inside of folders. So previously it was quite difficult to actually find things. And you go into a folder, you can't see anything except that folder. But with this change, it should be easier to find your reports instead of having to dig around multiple folders in order to find them. And this should save some time of our analysts here and there. Next up, for the Synapse updates, which is not the same as Azure Synapse, they introduced the ability to disable vOrder. And vOrder is basically the technology that powers the direct lake query, which is absolutely insane. It has incredible performance while being like a streaming direct connection. So previously, direct connections were pretty bad if you had a lot of data and you had to make your queries incredibly optimized for it to work. But vOrder is very powerful. It doesn't have to be that optimized, and everything still behaves very responsively. So if you know that you're not going to create a Power BI report on top of a data lake, a lakehouse in Microsoft Fabric, then you can actually switch that off, because it does slow down the writing time when writing into a lakehouse, but then it significantly speeds up the reading time for the reports. So if you know, so for example, if you're using a medallion architecture, you're not going to create a report off of your bronze and your silver layer, then that would be a great use case for turning off vOrder in order to optimize your writes. But just beware, if you do turn it off, you can't turn it back off. Can't turn it back on again. You'll have to recreate everything from scratch. And the same thing can be said for Delta Lake logging. So Delta Lake logging is what basically anything that consumes from a Delta Lake in Fabric only knows that something has been updated when that update gets logged in Delta Lake logging. So the table can change, but it won't reflect in Power BI or your APIs or anything until it gets logged. So what this ability to pause that logging allows you to do is basically put a break or a pause or a delay between the data being updated and then that update proliferating, is that the right word? It kind of staggering throughout all of its child items. But this one can be paused and resumed again, no problem. So the idea is you would begin your notebook execution, do your ETL process. At the beginning, you would pause it, do the update, and then at the end, resume. And then if you're doing multiple updates in that session, it'll only come up as one update right at the end. That's the idea there. And then finally, they've added some basic SQL functions that are now supported in Microsoft Fabric. So previously, this was not supported in general availability. And what we can now do on Delta tables is alter table scripts as well as truncate table scripts. This is something that I actually ran into. I couldn't truncate a table after getting some bad data in there, but it is now possible. And this might sound pretty trivial, like why couldn't you truncate a table before? But just remember that underlying that table is not actually a SQL table. It's Parquet files in a folder somewhere partitioned. So the fact that you can truncate all of them and add columns, those kinds of things, it's pretty impressive that you can do that on a bunch of Parquet files. And you can now do that in Microsoft Fabric as well. So yeah, when you can finally alter a table. And then finally, they also made some improvements to database mirroring, which is similar to Databricks Lakehouse Federation. You point you have pointers and shortcuts into an actual SQL database. So that creates a mirrored table that doesn't store any data. It just points to data being stored in a different system. So now these mirrored tables, while they are mirroring and actively updating, you can drop and rename those tables, and you can also rename columns on them. And then previously it was pretty tricky to set up those mirroring tables, but now they can be done through the modern Get Data UI. So if you've used that, is where you basically, same as in Power BI, get data, shows you a matrix of all the different data sources you can connect to, and then kind of the user interface prompts you in order to build those connections. All right, next up is all the data. So what's first? Data engineering, data science, data factory. Data engineering. All right. So a big thing here, this is mostly for the Spark notebooks. They have announced that MS Spark utils has now been upgraded to notebook utils, and that's actually going to be deprecated in the future. So if you are using notebook utils, just make sure that you switch over to Spark utils before that happens. They also made improvements to importing notebooks. So it now looks like this, and then this, you couldn't do this previously. So it's the same as importing reports or paginated reports, and then you can just upload your, what are they called? IPyNB, I think that's what they're called. You can now upload your IPyNB files, and they should come up quite nicely into the Fabric environment. And then also some updates on the Fabric runtime lifecycle targets. So they've been working on maturing this process, and so they've announced pretty much that this is what they're trying to do. So runtime 1.3, which is the newest one, is currently in public preview and it's being prepared for general availability. Right now, runtime 1.2 is already stable and in general availability, and then runtime 1.1 will be discontinued soon. Well, end of March next year. Just be aware of that. I think it's always best to be in the highest stable version at all times. Right, and then data science, machine learning and AI. So they've announced a very cool Python library, Semantic Link Labs. This is actually a rebrand of an old one. I can't remember the original name now. But this library allows you to do some cool Power BI functions via notebook code. And I actually have a little GIF that I'd like to show you afterwards. So it now allows you to, double-clicked, unfortunately, allows you to analyze your semantic models, your Power BI models, via Vertipack Analyzer and the Best Practice Analyzer as code. And it also allows you, this is pretty cool, automatically translate the semantic model metadata. And they have a demo of how they translate it into, I think it's Spanish and Chinese. So actually very cool. I know translation is something that historically takes a lot of time. So doing that automatically is a big improvement. If you've done it, then you know it's very useful. And then they've also increased monitoring for some of the data science artifacts. So ML experiments are now part of the monitoring hub. That you can track ML experiment runs in Spark applications. And then you can monitor, I actually put that one twice. You can now monitor ML experiments from the Monitor Hub. All right. And then there's a new AI skill in public preview. So AI is everywhere these days. So basically what this allows you to do is to build an AI experience on top of your data. And then that can be used to answer questions based on your data. So I think this would be pretty cool for internal chatbots, Q&A. No longer need to create a lot of documentation on what's in a semantic model. You can now just ask the AI skill, hey, what's in this model? And I want to show you this video about auto-translating. So you see import Tempe Labs as labs, and then there you go. So actually that was too quick. Hang on, let me go back a little bit. It's one line of code. You just go, hey, I told it to pause. There we go. One line of code. You just tell it to translate a semantic model, pass in the dataset name, the languages that you want to translate to, and some characters that you'd like to exclude, and then fire it off. And there it goes, translating a bunch of things. So this is the model metadata. And then if you go into your Power BI report that's based on that thing, and you'll see here at top in the URL, you change your language to a different region. What'll happen is it'll think that you're in a different language, and there we go, translate everything automatically. And I think that just here at the end, they also show the same for Chinese. So yeah, there you go. I'm not sure if this is Chinese. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, this is definitely not English or Spanish. So I think that's very cool, and it can save a lot of time in the future. Oh, and this is officially endorsed by Fabric. So it's not some sketchy workaround tool. It's an official Microsoft thing that they've endorsed now. All right, and then Data Factory, not that Data Factory, this Data Factory. They've added some new connections. So as you all know, they've been working on Dataflow Gen 2 and also the Data Factory pipelines. So for Dataflow Gen 2, they've added a bunch of cool new connections. I don't recognize all of these, but ones that I did recognize definitely was Bloomberg. I think that's pretty cool, being able to pull in some stocks data. And then the things that have been deprecated, if you were using this, beware, is the Amplify metrics and the Social Bakers metrics. Just beware. Then data pipelines, I think this is quite a big one. They've added connections for Salesforce as well as Vertica. So yeah, we do actually need to integrate with Salesforce soon in one of our projects. So looking forward to actually trying this out. But yeah, that's a big new partnership that Microsoft has got into. Still waiting for the Databricks connector though, but we'll get there. All right, then everything that happens in these pipelines has now been upgraded to TLS 1.3. I didn't know what TLS was until recently. So for those of you who don't know, it's the transport layer security. And that basically protects your data in flight. All right, and then the rest that didn't make it to, I just kind of dumped the rest of them on their own slide, on the like a separate slide. So One Lake permissions, they've redesigned the user interface for assigning data access roles, made it a little bit easier, simplified item permission controls with new user count and sorting options, and then added schema support for lakehouses to define security at the schema level. Previously, everything was in the default DBO schema, but now you can create your own schemas. And then some real-time analysis. I tried this out. I still can't type analysis, guys. I've been typing analysis so much in this PI planning that we were in this for the last 2 days. Like I've forgotten how to type it. No, but what they've done is the first time you open up real-time analysis, it will kind of create a guided tour of how to use Fabric real-time experience via these little teaching bubbles. So kind of living documentation for how to use it. And then they've also added KQL query set to the Fabric REST API, which means that you can programmatically create, update, and delete KQL query sets in Microsoft Fabric, which is awesome because the UI is very annoying and it's very difficult to add different things. So if you add it programmatically, you only have to type it out once and then never again. Yeah, this is me after reading all the Fabric updates. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for listening, guys. Let me come back here to the main screen. Oh, I see we have a question. Lawrence, yes. Lawrence, can you hear us?
Oh, where did you see that question? Because I'm busy monitoring the chat for you, but I don't see it.
You know, it might be a bug. I have noticed sometimes
okay.
Hands come up.
Oh, I see. The hand is up when it is not legit. Okay, yeah.
It's an old hand.
There was a question from Abraham, but I must admit I don't understand it. Abraham, do you mind unmuting yourself and just trying to explain it?
Is it about the domain email?
Let me I was asking if you can share any insight on any platform that you're aware of where one can actually exercise data analytics skills just to sharpen those skills that you mentioned.
Sorry, I'm not hearing a word of really what you're saying.
Yeah, I also can't hear anything.
Can you hear me?
Yes, that sounds better.
Okay. I was asking if you can share an insight to any platform online that you feel I can get a remote or freelancing opportunity where I can actually exercise some of these skills just to gain a valuable experience into this new development that you are sharing. So that was the question.
Okay, it sounds asking for an online platform where you can get some experience and freelancing
Yes,
opportunities. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, please.
Okay. Sure. I don't know of anything.
So look, I mean, Power BI service
okay.
is free. So for Power BI stuff, that's fine, unless you wanted to share stuff. But as soon as you go into Fabric, then you can get your trial period. And beyond that, then you'll have to start paying. Now, you can extend your trial period. And in fact, my extended trial period is ending like tomorrow or the next day. But Abraham, I'm not sure what you wanted to try. But if it's Fabric related or Power BI related, you can just, you'd need an Office 365 account to create, to log into powerbi.com, okay, and then go from there.
Yeah, I've dropped the link to the Fabric portal there, or Fabric service. It's the same for Power BI and Fabric. It's just app.powerbi.com to get started.
All right, thank you.
Cool. All right. Are there any other questions on, I guess, the BI news and the Fabric news so far? I'm glad you enjoyed my puns, Melissa. All right. No, if there's no questions, then we can carry on. Sven, are you ready for us? You're going to show us some tips and tricks on Power Query, I believe.
Yes, indeed. And before I do that, usually the MC says thank you to the presenter. Now, in this case, Stefan is the MC, and I don't think he's going to say thank you to himself. So I think it is only fitting that I say thank you very much to Stefan for that news section. Clearly, you put a lot of effort into it, so well done. That was excellent. And Sia, as a colleague of mine, I've already pinged him to say thank you for the Power BI news, because that was also very, very good. So that's excellent. Thanks to both of you. I'm just going to share my screen quickly. I was going to do this last month, but the Click presenter overran a bit. So I'm now doing Power Query tips and tricks. I'm just sharing my screen. If you can see my screen, it should be a Power Query window. You got that?
Yes, I can see that. And I'll be monitoring the chat for you this time. All
right, tremendous. Look, I've been using Power Query for a very long time. In fact, for those of you who aren't aware, Power Query has been in Excel before Power BI was invented. So, you know, for a long, long time. And I still keep coming up or finding new things that I didn't think was possible. And so it really is, I think, a fantastic tool. So I want to just show you a couple of things that you may or may not have been aware of. And I'm just going to show you 3 things. But I'm hoping that that will also get your mind open to the idea that there's a lot more than meets the eye. Meaning, obviously in Power Query, which maybe I'll just zoom out for a second, Power Query is a part of Power BI Desktop. It's also available in Excel, as I mentioned. And when you are using it in the web, in Power BI Service, it's actually called a data flow, but it's basically Power Query in the cloud. Okay, and basically Power Query is used to connect to data sources and or to clean the data. So to remove columns that you don't need, or filter down to only be, you know, year of transactions equal to 2023 or higher, you know, that kind of story. Or maybe you've got to clean up Joburg, it should become Johannesburg, you know, that kind of story. But anyway, there's infinitely more that can be done. And normally the easy way is just to use, you know, the user interface. You know, click on a button, you add a column, you index a column, you invoke a custom function, you do some date manipulation, that kind of story. But there's a lot more than just what is available on the user interface. And that's actually what I want to cover. And a colleague of mine, JP, shared a website with me, which when he first shared it with me, I must admit, I didn't like it. Okay, powerquery.how. I find all of this stuff a bit overwhelming. I don't know, you know, what to do with all it. It's too much stuff. But actually, I'm still sharing it with you because I use it a lot, despite the fact of in the beginning I didn't like it, and I use it because of this search function. Okay, so I'll come back to this, but when you're doing when you're using Power Query interface, it's writing syntax in the background. Even though you're clicking on the buttons on the front end, it's writing the code in the back end. And so, like I said, there's way more that you can do if you start to get comfortable with the code. And then this website helps you find out what is possible. As an example, text dot. Okay, so as soon as you want to do anything with text, the syntax is text dot, and then from there, after delimiter, before, between, clean, combine. Now, some of these are available through the user interface and others are not. So you need to come here and look here. So if you want to get the middle of a string, or if you want to pad the start, you want to make it a weak number to be 0, 1 instead of just 1. Then you can pad the start with a leading 0. Okay, that kind of story. Or text dot upper, so it uppercases everything, that kind of story. And some of them I'm going to show you. I really want to plant the seed that says there's a lot more that you can do, including date dot, so date is in the previous day, is in the previous month. So if you had a data source that had 10 years of data, you could just say is in previous year, or in previous, where's the N year? N, and you can then specify N is 1 year or 3 years or 5 years. Okay, you can say is leap year, is, whatever. The list is just long and long and long. So that's the main sort of introduction. Now I just want to show you a couple of use cases. Okay, so where am I going? Here, so many people, in fact, many end users want to know when last the data was refreshed. So, we all want to do a data refreshed as of. Okay, now the problem is the way to do that is normally the default is it's the time zone of the server that does the refresh. And so if the connection, if the gateway and whatever is in a server that's in South Africa, then it's 2 hours ahead of GMT. But maybe your users are actually in America. Okay, so if we publish reports for Americans and we show the server time is now 17:46 on the 29th of August. In fact, maybe I must use a better example. Maybe they're in the Far East or in Australia. They've already gone into the 30th of August. And so they're misled by when the data was refreshed. Okay, so unfortunately in Power Query, I can't really zoom the formula bar, so I hope that you can actually see it. Normally what we do is we would go date.time local now, and so it's the time of the local server now. But instead, I'm using GMT time zone, which is a Power Query function. So I can get the time zone, the refresh time as of GMT, and then another function called date time zone switch zones. Okay, so that's also a built-in function with the code. And I just created a parameter to say the offset from GMT is 2 hours. Now that's South Africa. So if just look, pay careful attention. There's the 29th of August at 17:47. If I were to say we're in Australia, okay, if I go to the date refresh, okay, so forget Australia, one past Australia, I don't know, maybe Australia is 9 hours from here, I don't know. There we go, we're going into tomorrow at 48 minutes past midnight. So that means if the end user is in Australia, and obviously I'm hard coding this for an Australian user, it would be 9 hours ahead of when the server was actually refreshed. So that's very cool, but you can't get to it with any of these built-in functions. But if you start to use these things, or like if you had something like time zone, okay, okay, maybe that's not the best example because the list is quite long. But yeah, date.timezone UTC now, okay, you know, that kind of story. So you can start to search, and that's why I like this website so much, is because of the searchability. Okay, just one thing to know about Power Query. Unfortunately, it is case sensitive. So here's the syntax that we need to go, date time zone dot switch zone. So if I just wrote switch zone with a small z, it would give me an error. So just obviously bear that in mind as well. Oopsie. Sorry. So just bear that in mind as well. Okay. All right. So that's the one thing I wanted to.
I have a question from.
Yes, go for it.
I think it's Daryl.
Yes, big guy.
So you can get a better editor if you want to try and figure that out. If you're on a data table, for instance, and you say add a column, a custom column, it actually brings up the Power Query editor formula for you. And then as you type, it's similar to the DAX syntax. So it's got that intelligence behind it, and it will help you with the uppercase and lowercase and all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. The IntelliSense of it, and that, you know, it wasn't always like that. M syntax didn't have, or that Power Query didn't have it, but it does have it now. So and sometimes it won't really work so well if I'm in the middle of a sentence. There we go. So GMT Tate.time zone, and you can see big D, big T, big Z. Yeah. Good. That's a good one to know as well. Okay, now just looking at the time, there's a whole nother BI flash coming, so I must be fast. Okay, so I think I've covered all of the time zone story. Then the next one I want to just quickly show you is I don't know if you're aware that Power Query can handle. So here's our calendar that we use internally. Okay, it can handle. Okay, this is a table. Okay, it's a table, so that's rows and columns. Power Query can also handle lists. Okay, so that's the icon for a list. Okay, so that's a single column. It can also handle a record, which you can view it as a business card, you know, like your name. It's basically got a group of information. And it can also, and you can then go and use each of those things. And the other one is binary type, but you can then go and do different things with a table, combining it with a list. Okay, and I just want to spend a minute or two just doing that now quickly. So as an example, if this is the calendar here and we've got all of our dates here, I'm just going to go to the last step here. I'm going to click on the FX button. I'm going to add a new step basically. Okay, and it immediately just puts a reference to the previous step. Okay, and because I'm short of time, I'm just going to copy copy it from somewhere else here quickly and paste it in here. Okay, and I hit enter. So now it's added that step, and what I've done is I've gone and said I've called it the column is called short month tag. I've added the function is table.add column. That's what it's going to do for you if you're using the user interface. And then I'm doing a function called list.min of a short month. So here's the short month list. Now list.min is silly. I'm basically just trying to extract the minimum value or the maximum value or whatever. Now that is normally what it doesn't make any sense to try and get the minimum of this list. But actually, if the list only has one value in it, if Power Query can't find that one value, you still have to do list.min to get that single value. So that's just a little workaround. If you've got a list of one value and you want to I just want to use that value, why can't I get to it? The workaround is you've got to just go list.min to get it. But in this case, for this example, I want to quickly just get rid of the list.min to show you that it will actually put a column with the list inside it. Okay, so here, everything that's in this list is now on each row of my table. Okay, and so now you do have this little up arrow thingies here, which I've got two options. Expand to new rows. Now this is a silly thing to do in this example, but I'm going to do it anyway. Now for each one of these 5 or 6, okay, it's gone and created a new row. You can see the 31st of December is repeated because it's repeated for each one of these rows. That's the expand option that I chose. So I'm just going to delete that step and just try the other one, which is extract values. So now it's going to just turn the list into a single row each, and I can delimit them with maybe a semicolon. And so now I've got February, April, June, whatever, coming from this list. Okay, now bear with me. I'm just going to copy and paste one more thing and then I'm done because of the time limit. But let me go and do that and get rid of that one. And again, you might say, well, I don't care about short weeks and lists and whatever, but I'm just trying to show you that there's so much more that you can actually do just by typing in what you're trying to achieve and using the code that's available. Okay, so I'm going to copy that piece, which actually I already had, then I deleted it, but anyway. So one more step, paste that, enter. Okay, so I've got my list. And then the last step I want to do quickly is this one. Okay, there, Control copy, Alt tab, and one more step is equal to paste, enter. Now, it's adding a column. It's referring to the previous step. That's what it normally does. It's called, the column name is called short month, and it says if list.contains, so it's actually looking for anything that's in this list, okay, if it's equal to the month, it's equal to, oh yeah, of course, the month column, okay, the month column. And okay, now this looks a bit scary, but this is the way to say, just ignore if it's upper or lowercase. So remember I said it's case sensitive. So if the one match says August, AUG, and the other one is with a capital A and the other one's a lowercase, it won't find a match, which is bad. So just putting this there helps it ignore the case, and then it's an if statement. So if it's in the short list, it'll say yes. If it's not, it'll say no. So after all of that, what have we got? It's got short month with an N or a Y, and Y is anyone that's not a short month because it's not in this list. And these are all the 28 or 30 days of the year as opposed to the 31 days of the year. Okay, yeah, I overdid that a bit. So anyway, hopefully that helps you guys. And over to the next presenter.
Thanks, Ben. This is insightful. I guess for Power Query, really, the sky's the limit, hey?
Genuinely, it really is. I think it's fantastic. And like I said, I've been using it for so long, and I still keep finding more and more things that it can do. It's like, wow, I never thought it could do that. You know, that kind of story.
Awesome. Cool. Let's move on for time. Once again, thank you very much for presenting. Yeah, Keamo is very keen to get started. So Keamo, over to you. No, can't hear you yet.
Oh, this is perfect. And now?
There we go. Yeah, perfect.
Cool. Cool. I am not gonna finish in 4 minutes, so I want to apologize. And if you guys do need to drop, I do understand. It will be a character building activity when you see people dropping off as you speak. But it's all good. Let me get to sharing my screen quickly. I also am using one screen, so just bear with me. Cool. I'm gonna go through EishTML content. I just want to apologize again for that title. Half of the blame has to go to Steph because it was partly his idea. The agenda is we're basically going to go through what is Power BI HTML content custom visual, the advantage of using HTML in Power BI, disadvantages and limitations, interesting facts and tips, and then a quick demo. Cool. So what is HTML content custom visual? So this visual allows users to embed and render HTML and CSS content within Power BI reports. This visual makes it possible to create highly customized and interactive visualization. I just like the fact that it allows you to be more flexible on Power BI. So yeah, the purpose is to extend the capabilities of Power BI by integrating complex HTML-based content such as web functionality, embedded media, and interactive elements. You have to install this because it's a custom visual. It's not provided out of the box. And then the advantages, as I mentioned, customization. So you're able to do a lot more with the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript toolset. interactivity. It supports dynamic interaction and content updates. You can use JavaScript to create responsive and interactive elements. You can do this for the content, the HTML contents custom visual, but not necessarily for the light, which is the one that is certified. That one has a lot of limitations for security purposes. So just note that. And then the embedding content, you're able to embed content like images, videos, maps, and external web components. And lastly, the data representation. So it allows you to be creative with the way you visualize your data on Power BI.
Anything plugged in.
So the disadvantages and limitations. So we've gotten to the H part of HTML. So the first thing was performance. I think the performance issues. So in the you can use it in many different ways. Like in the manners that I've used it, I think experienced a lot of. I think it hits either the database or whatever platform or tool you're using quite heavily. The more complex your HTML and CSS script is. There's also security concerns, right? So if you're using JavaScript, there's concerns like cross-site scripting attacks. So that's also something to note. And it is for the non-certified custom visual, that's more of a responsibility on the dev and the developer. And then for the limited, there's also limited interactions with Power BI. So on that aspect, it's regarding the filtering. So when you add the content, the custom visual, you're able to filter, but it has its limitations. And then the lack of direct support, so it requires knowledge of HTML, CSS, and possibly JavaScript. Compatibility issues, not all HTML or CSS features are supported. And the browser compatibility, so rendering might differ between the browsers. So if you're implementing on Power BI desktop, it might render differently on the Power BI service. So once you've published and stuff, so that's something to also consider. Interesting facts and tips, performance optimization. Basically just consideration to use lightweight HTML and CSS so that the visuals render and the report refreshes quicker. Security best practices. So I would say avoid using JavaScript, but if you do use JavaScript, sanitizing your input data, and then for custom, and then there's custom branding, right? You can add. Yeah, I think that's more on the customizability. Future enhancements. Power BI supports for HTML content may expand, offering more native features and integration possibilities, and the integration with APIs. I want to just go through this quickly because we are already over. I'm just going to go through the demo. Just need to switch and the presentation so I can give you guys a quick demo. Where is Power BI? Okay. Cool. So I used Kaggle data, Amazon products. Just a quick presentation of like what is possible. So for this, I used the HTML content custom visual, and that you can get from downloading it through the Get More Visuals and the Power BI Marketplace. And once you have installed it, you can also get the light version, which is more secure, but very limited in what you can do, by the way. So once you have installed it, you are able to basically use HTML and CSS and embed it into Power BI. This visual that you're looking at is I basically did some massaging of the data just to get like a nice visual out for demonstration purposes. So this is categorized products, and it is also quite, I think the nice thing about this is that you don't have to add bookmarks or pagination or use complex DAX queries to get this web feel. And that's a really nice thing. And it does, I think that a bit of flexibility and added visual appeal, I think for me is a selling point with this HTML CSS. Although I did mention that the performance is also could be an issue. There is ways around it, but something to consider. So you can also filter. I did mention in this case, what we are looking at is the top performing and poor performing products. I did it based on ratings, just something basic, and I implemented it off on using Python, but you can use SQL or whatever data manipulation tool that you're comfortable with. But yeah, basically that's one of the few things you can do with it. You can also embed Google Maps. I don't know why you do this, but it's possible. And yeah, like I think it's a cool tool, and it does give you a lot in terms of flexibility on Power BI. So that is me. I am 5 minutes over, and I wanted to give you guys the behind the scenes, but I think this is okay for now.
That's awesome. Thanks, Keamo. I guess now you can use your Power BI report to navigate to see how long it's going to take to get home in traffic. But yeah, no, that's very interesting. I'm sure it has some awesome use cases. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, and we're a little over time, but it's not the end of the world. Yeah, I guess